You had a sort of a blow up with Manishankar Iyer on the Prime Minister's plane, where he announced that he was a proud communist and he would welcome the old Soviet Union. And you told him that as Stalin's media advisor, you would have pushed him out of the plane.
That's right.
What do you think of him? I mean, if he's an avowed communist, what is he doing in the Congress party?
Yeah, Mani is a bundle of contradictions. I mean, he is this Panchayati Raj guy who's from Stephens, so he has all the kind of social attitudes of a snobbish Stephanian, but at the same time...
calling a guy chaiwala.
Chaiwala. But at the same time he's
espousing... BJP a huge amount of material
to... Exactly. But at the same time espousing Panchayati Raj, So he's a bundle of contradictions, and this is one more of those.
I think one of the most important things that you have shown in your book, while people have interviewed you at length about Sonia Gandhi's power and all that she was doing, one of the things that you have exposed more than anything else is the media. I think I counted about 7-8 stories where you mentioned plants. And you've also described journalists and put them in categories, which puts them in one, the star journalists.
Yeah, the professionals, the ideologically motivated.
Now you say the large part of them are the professionals who are just looking for a story. So let's give us journalists that much at least, that the majority is looking for a story.
Correct.
The second is the star journalists. And then there are the access journalists. And also the ones who want to be treated special with limousines and, that kind of thing. There are a lot of people who don't come out looking good. Veer Sanghvi is one of them, in which he wrote a column dubbing Narayana a flat-footed policeman. Obviously, in that column, he was pushing the Foreign Service lobby. How common is it for journalists to push a lobby for appointments?
Well, I think, first of all, I don't think Veer was pushing for any individual to get the job. I think he was making the larger point. And there was a view, very strong view, that the National Security Advisor should be someone with an international background and experience. And therefore, and as I mentioned in the book, we have this caste hierarchy within the government, which is the IAS, the IFS, or the IFS, the IAS, and certainly the IPS is at the bottom of that hierarchy. And Narayanan was from the IPS. So I think a lot of the IFS guys felt that, look, how can you have an NSA from the police service? These guys are lathi charge.
No, but why would a journalist take positions on the appointment of a particular person and lobby for the Foreign Service lobby? It's very questionable.
It is questionable, but it happens quite a bit in the media in Delhi. I've seen it from both sides as a journalist and from the government. And the only thing is, from the government, whenever I saw an article or a news report or a column like this, my only concern was to find out for whom is this person lobbying. That was my only interest, to check out, okay, I understand the logic of this, but who is behind this? And then go and inform the Prime Minister that I think this guy is behind this story, so that he was aware of who's trying for what.
And another point where Veer Sanghvi again doesn't look good is when his questions to Sonia were pre-approved by her at the HT summit. And she said the survival, at that time the nuclear deal was being pushed by Manmohan Singh, and Sonia was afraid of the government falling by the left pulling out, just to context it for our viewers. And she said at the summit that the survival of the government took precedence over the nuclear deal. And the second speaker after that was Manmohan Singh, again with Veer Sanghvi. And Veer Sanghvi asked him, do you think you've overstepped a bit? I mean, it seems like he was pushing Sonia's agenda there.
Yeah, it's true. But I would say, I would grant it to Veer that he was the only one whom Sonia was willing to give interviews to, and I think the condition
possibly
always
because he was the only one who was willing to give her the questions.
I'm sure many others would have done the same, but I think in his case at least she trusted him. But also the fact is that the Hindustan Times Summit was a kind of an event where the company would have wanted him to be nice to a guest, but
he wasn't nice to Manmohan Singh.
That's true. And you can see Manmohan Singh's uncharacteristic anger in his reply. That reply he gives, where he repeats twice, I have not overstepped, I have not done, I know what I'm doing, which is very uncharacteristic. These are extempore. So you can see that he was irritated by the question.
So Sonia and Manmohan at that summit then were having an argument, a sort of a surrogate argument through Veer Sanghvi, where she was stating his position and he was fighting back for the first time and possibly the last time, the only time that he actually fought back, right?
Yeah,
was the
but
nuclear deal.
that whole event I described how that was a time when he was upset, then he became quiet, and then by the end of the year everybody thought the nuclear deal was dead. He never spoke about it, and then slowly he revived it again next year and then pushed it.
By building support, yeah. Yes. You say that when this nuclear deal was going to, you found that Brajesh Mishra had changed his mind and was willing to support it. And then you encouraged Karan Thapar to interview him. Again, I mean, you're admitting to a plant. You're admitting to telling Karan Thapar, go interview him because we want to push this viewpoint.
No. I mean, Karan is a professional. I mean, he's always looking for people to interview. And I asked Karan because Karan is a very good interviewer. I mean, he's one of the few guys that who does his homework, knows how to ask good questions. So I didn't want to ask someone who would mess it up, but because Karan, I trusted, would do his professional work. It's not as if I gave Karan a set of questions. All I did was to suggest to him, I think if you interviewed Brajesh Mishra, you'll get a story. So he went and interviewed him, and he got his story.
Okay. In Business Standard, a confidential letter from Sonia to the Prime Minister got leaked, and it was a front page story. Manmohan Singh was furious, and you asked Nainan how it got out and who leaked it, and of course he was protecting his source. But you confirmed that it was Jairam Ramesh who had his own agenda and had leaked the story. Now, it seems that politicians are busy leaking stories, but don't you think, you've been an editor, don't you think that when a story is leaked to you, okay, you're hungry for a story, but would it be a good idea for a journalist to say, let me question why I'm being given this story, what is the agenda, and possibly getting the other side, which makes it ethically viable to accept a leak as long as you understand the agenda of the other person and get the other side.
Absolutely.
But just to take up your leak as is and put it, which is what is happening, becomes a very dangerous phenomena where the readers are being fooled.
You know, when I first joined this profession, I used to teach in a university for the first 10 years of my life, and then I became a journalist. One of the first things I remember Nikhil Chakravarti, who was the editor of Mainstream, saying to me is that most scoops are leaks. And I can never forget that phrase, most scoops are leaks, right?
With an agenda.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But it's true that a good professional should always use a leak and then cross-check and talk to the other side, etc. And when I was editor and I insisted that my reporters do this, their reply used to always be that, look, if we cross-check with the other side,
they'll kill the story.
They'll kill the story, or they will leak a different story to a rival newspaper. You know, we will have one version, they will have other. You know, all these various arguments used to be given. But and in India, it's not a very strong tradition, though I think increasingly newspapers do talk to both sides. But you're absolutely right. This is a big disease in Indian journalism. And let me tell you very honestly, when I was in government, I used it to the hilt.
Yes,
you know?
That's clear in the book.
That's right.
That you're busy planting stories all over the place and guiding people into interviews and that kind of thing. But I think it's the journalist's job to watch out for people like you when you're in that position.
Absolutely.
Also, another instance where Sharad Pawar found there were many negative stories about him, and he spoke to you and wanted the Prime Minister...
No, he spoke to the PM.
To the Prime Minister.
Yeah, he complained to the PM that there are a lot of stories appearing in the media criticizing him, and that his information was that they were coming from PMO. So then Dr. Singh called me and said, you know, are you doing any of this? So I said, look, why should I plant stories against Mr. Pawar?
You found out that it was the party leadership, which is a
No, Prithviraj Chauhan specifically.
Yeah.
Meaning what Pawar had heard was true, that some of the stories were coming from the PMO, but it was not me, certainly. And when I did cross-check and talk to a few journalists, etc., they said that, you know, Prithvi in some of his conversations would kind of drop stories.
But there was a grouse that Sonia had against Pawar for complaining, for bringing up the issue of her Italian origin when she was thinking of becoming Prime Minister. So I think it was encouraged by
I don't know
the
if it
party?
was explicitly encouraged by her. I mean, that I have no idea. But I think it was also part of Maharashtra politics. I mean, after all, don't forget, Prithvi has finally become Chief Minister of Maharashtra. So he was probably using his position in the PMO to strengthen his own base vis-a-vis that of Pawar. So.
Another instance where in Asian Age, a story appeared by Seema Mustafa, another plant by Natwar Singh. And when you asked for a letter correcting it, it did not appear in print. What happened over there? Natwar Singh was planting stories with Seema Mustafa?
Well, in this particular instance, I know that this is what had happened. I don't know if he did it often, but certainly it happened. And when I wrote a letter to the editor, next day morning, the letter to the editor didn't appear. So then I had to issue a press release that day to the rest of the media. And then on the third day, the letter to the editor appeared. So that was one example where I found that issuing letters to the editor, even from the Prime Minister's office, you're not assured that the media would actually publish you.
There were some plants against you in Punjab Kesari, where they announced your imminent dismissal, कि Sanjay Baru की छुट्टी होगी, because as it claimed, the Congress party leadership was unhappy with my style of functioning. Basically, you saw your job as projecting the Prime Minister, and that did not sit well with the party leadership, which is Sonia. So Dr. Singh, then you wrote, said to you, why don't you call on Sonia? They will stop bothering you. The reference was to those around Sonia who were seen to be planting stories in the media against you. And the suggestion was that once you were seen as having access to her, the sniping would end. And that sounds really bad. It sounds that you have to, it's like a court that you have to go and pay obeisance. There is almost like an established suck-up culture.
But that is Delhi.
Is it Delhi or was it this government?
Oh, it's Delhi.
But Vajpayee didn't expect people to suck up to him.
Yeah, he was there for a very brief while. Maybe if he had continued for 10 years, he might have fallen for the same culture.
I don't know. I think he got irritated with people who did that. He was dismissive.
Yeah, this Darbar. I mean,
so it's very much like Indira Gandhi's blueprint. Indira Gandhi expected that. Everything was based on loyalty, not on merit, not on who's the best person for the job. It was who was the most loyal to her. And Sonia has carried that blueprint forward. That loyalty is the decisive factor in who gets appointed to what, not who's good at what job.
Absolutely. I mean, the main criticism against me now is that I've been disloyal rather than I'm incorrect. I mean, nobody's saying what is written is wrong. I mean, though they call it fiction, but there's no specific criticism. But the criticism is I've been disloyal. So it's the Darbar culture.
Those in power who connect with editors and journalists, this access and blocking of journalists and newspapers, whatever, it does compromise us, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
That you, just to get access, you...
It does.
Now,
that's a hazard.
One very important question you have written about how, and it's an example, how the press can mislead people. N. Ram, who called the Prime Minister's speech visionary in the Congress in America.
No, this is Oxford University.
In Oxford University. Yeah. He called it visionary at the end of it, and he was very excited about it. Backed out of writing an editorial because Irfan Habib and Prabhat Patnaik of the CPIM had attacked the Prime Minister on that speech, and he then told you that he could not go against the Communist Party. Now, N. Ram is a card-carrying member of the Communist Party. Do you think it is right for the owner, and I think it's a bit of an anachronism there also because dichotomy really, it's a dichotomy, that he's a capitalist owner of the newspaper and is a card-carrying member of the Communist Party. Do you think it's right for either the owners or the editor of a paper, which he is, to belong to a political party? Does it color coverage?
Well, I mean, Ram is not the only person, particularly if you look at the Indian language media, there are people who are Congress party members, publishers, BJP members, publishers, regional party member publishers, and the Indian media is full of politicians owning newspapers, magazines, TV channels. And they are openly so. I mean, Rajshekar Reddy's son, YSR, owns Sakshi TV, where every day his father's photo comes, etc. So we have in this country, politicians having direct control over the media. And Ram is a slightly different case, that he's not a full-time politician, but he's certainly been a member of the CPM and very close to CPM leadership. In fact, the one journalist who really comes across badly in my book is Ram, because it's not just this incident, but the more famous incident, which is that he wrote an entire editorial praising Manmohan Singh on the 123 nuclear agreement in support of it.
Down.
And then backed off because the left refused to support him. And then wrote a second editorial basically saying that, yeah, the agreement is good, but don't go ahead.
So he was following the party line, which really colors the newspaper, but the readers don't know that. An average reader doesn't know that. They just take what is written without understanding. Now, one last thing, the PM's interview to Manini Chatterjee, which evolved into a really fantastic interview when she first came to Delhi. The Congress party, mainly the party leadership, wanted you to issue a denial that it ever took place. Now, how could they even suggest that? It makes the reporter a liar. And they were okay with that, which is actually happening today with your book.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there was, I can't recollect now what exactly I've written in the book on that, but I'm not sure if they asked me to issue a denial, but I was certainly informed that I would be asked. And therefore, I was waiting for that message to come, which never finally came. I was told even by colleagues in the PMO that, you might have to issue a denial. So obviously, this was being discussed, whether or not the PM should issue a denial. If the Prime Minister had accepted that suggestion, I would have been made to look like a fool, because I would have been issuing a denial.
What about Manini's credibility? It's damaged,
absolutely.
damaged forever, where people will just say that she cooked it up. You're finally, actually, the last question, since you are in a rush to go. The strongest statement Manmohan Singh made to you was that she let me down. And you said,
my father.
To your father. Yeah, he met two people, K. Subramaniam, your guru, and your father. To both of them, he said, she has let me down, which you wrote was tinged with sadness and anger.
Sadness rather than
anger. I want to ask you one thing, that here was this woman who became party president. How did the power shift? How did she manage this? How did this person who became only a party president become the power that actually ruled the country with no accountability at all? Are we such fools to have accepted this system? It is like the Putin system, the famous Putin system, for which a documentary has been written called the Putin system, where the Russian government pays for oil exploration, but the minute the oil goes through the pipes, it goes straight into Putin's private company, and he's the beneficiary. In this too, that this is the Sonia Gandhi system, where you take all the power and you're not accountable for anything. You take credit for everything that works out, and you put the blame on the Prime Minister for things that don't. It is the worst, and you are partly responsible because you suggested it in your editorial, but it is the worst system that has been perpetrated in India. It is unconstitutional. How did we allow this mafiosi style to happen in India?
Well, I mean,
how did she do it?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't take the blame for it, because I was only suggesting that he should be Prime Minister, and I was hoping that he would actually retain the powers of the Prime Minister. And
you couldn't imagine that it could have been eroded. But I would never imagine
there was this structure of the core group and the NSE and all these instrumentalities that were used to...
I mean, there were times when Pranab Mukherjee came back from Washington and didn't even brief him. He went to brief her.
That's the problem of the senior leaders, Arjun Singh, Pranab, Antony, who felt they were senior to Manmohan Singh.
So how did she do this?
But I think, don't forget, she was trained in politics in India by Mrs. Gandhi, by Mohit Sen, by the left. And I remember, I have not written this in the book, but I don't mind saying it now. I remember Sitaram Yechuri once saying to me that, in the conversations the left leaders used to have with her, probably even Jyoti Basu, they would say to her, look, in our system, this is how it works. The General Secretary is the boss. The Chief Minister reports to the General Secretary. Jyoti Basu would go every day to Lenin Sarani or wherever the CPM headquarters is in Calcutta and report to Pramod Dasgupta. And it's the party secretary who's the real boss, not the head of the government. E.K. Nayanar was Chief Minister, but whoever was the party secretary in Kerala would be the real boss. So this idea that the party secretary is the boss, which is the Soviet idea, the Chinese idea, is something that the left actually, from what I gather, used to tell her that, this is how you should run your Congress party. The party head is the real boss. The Prime Minister is only head of government. And I think that's what she learned from the system.
And slowly eroded it by undermining the Prime Minister's office and taking all the decisions.
Apart from the communists, Bal Thackeray had this system with Manohar Joshi as Chief Minister in Bombay. The Manohar Joshi was Chief Minister, but for all practical purposes, the boss was Bal Thackeray.
But it's different when it's the country.
That's what I say.
It's a huge difference.
That's what I say. That the Prime Minister is, at the end of the day, not just the head of government, he is the head of the country, he is a symbol of the sovereignty of India, he is the international face of the government of India. Therefore, it's not just like a Chief Minister, he actually is much more than that. And that is where I felt he ought to have asserted himself, which he did on occasions, but not always.
Thank you very much, Sanjay, for your time.